The story is about a young girl who wants to win a local beauty pageant, and alongside all of that is a big political moment for her family and for the community around her. It's a story that brings themes of beauty, of resistance and of joy into a world in 1963's Bristol. I started writing quite late in the day. I went to a workshop in Bristol run by Winsome Pinnock. I walked into the workshop and there was this writer who was black and female and was talking about being a playwright. And I felt suddenly that there was something. I'd always loved writing, but I suddenly saw another way of expressing the stories I wanted to tell. So that workshop led on to me writing my first play, which was then commissioned for the studio Bristol Vic, and I've sort of continued to write for the last 20 years from that point. For me, the inspiration is how we understand history, bringing history to a contemporary audience. I'm a history student. I love learning history, and it felt important to share that passion. But also there's a big bit of this play which is about what I call black girl magic and black girl joy. And that was the thing I wanted to bring, to make an audience understand that if you allow it, there's so much we can learn from history, and there's so much we can learn from that joy as well. I'll try not to get emotional about this, but I came into writing from very unconventional background. I had studied literature, but I'd never read a play by a black writer. And so for me as a writer to grow up in a particular background, and from very working class background, an immigrant background, and to have written a play that is now being taught and read by young people who, like me, might not have had access to that kind of material before, feels like the moment that you don't know you are wanting, but when it happens, it was really hard not to go, oh, I can retire now, job done. I read everything that I ever got my hands on. I was one of those young people that found solace and comfort and new worlds in books. So there wasn't anything I didn't read. I would read novels like Daphne du Maurier, and I would read adventure stories, and I would read anything that came to mind. And there were moments for me when I was reading and studying literature. I studied literature up to university, where I would feel like this is great, but it's very difficult for me to see myself in these stories sometimes. However much of a fantastical world you want to get lost in, it's important that we see ourselves in stories. And I remember actually reading The Famished Road by Ben Okri when I was a little bit older, and for the first time seeing my life, seeing a world that I understood, and that changing things. And I think that was the point where I fully committed to going to university and studying literature, because it was such a seminal piece of work for me personally. And that's why I'm committed to telling stories from a particular place, because it can change lives, and I don't think we take that on board fully. I hope that they find a history that surprises them. I hope that they find joy in the play, and I hope that they understand the shoulders that we stand on in terms of some of the ways in which this country has been built, and the ways in which we've all had to grow up in understanding some of our prejudices as well. I would say that, like all playwrights, I think what we're trying to do are tell specific stories that have universal themes. And I think in this play, teachers will be able to find themes about what it means to feel like you don't belong, I think we've all felt that in different ways at some point or another. They'll have opportunities to look at things like what it means not to have a lot of money, what it means to come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. They'll find themes around what it means to connect, even if you don't understand each other. I think some of the relationships that are in the play are really important in us understanding that you don't always have to see eye to eye for there to be love there. And I think all of that are things that for students and for teachers are universal themes. And I don't want to say that they won't have to do the work. We have to do the work. I have to do the work when I read some books because I don't know the worlds that they're talking about. But I think that if you do the work, this isn't an easy or hard play to understand.